The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like it had for the past 15 years. Jake Morrison stood at his office window, watching the golden light spread across the vast green fields that stretched to the horizon. The crops were growing well, this season. Too well, actually. They might have more food than they could store. Jake turned back to his desk where Lisa Carter sat reviewing the daily reports. She looked up at him with a smile that had become familiar over their 5 years working together. Lisa had joined the colony administration after her husband died in a mining accident. Work kept her busy and helped her cope with the loss. "And the harvest numbers look good," Lisa said, tapping her tablet. "Ben Tucker says the western fields will be ready 2 weeks early. Maria Santos thinks we might beat last year's record by 20%. Jake sat down and poured himself coffee from the pot Lisa always brought. The coffee came from Earth, shipped in every 6 months along with other supplies they could not make on Kepler 442c. The planet was good for farming, but it still felt alien sometimes. The days were 26 hours long, and the sky had a slight, purple tint that reminded everyone they were not on Earth anymore. "Any problems with the atmospheric processors?" Jake asked. "Carl Davis ran diagnostics yesterday. Everything running smooth. Susan Williams wants to upgrade the filters next month, but that can wait until the next supply ship arrives." Jake nodded. Carl and Susan made a good team. They had kept the life support systems running without major problems for 3 years. Before that, they had worked together on Mars colonies. Experience mattered out here, where the nearest help was months away. A soft knock came at the door. Dr. Alex Hayes entered, carrying his medical bag and looking tired. The doctor made rounds every morning, checking on the older colonists and anyone who had been injured at work. Farming was safer than mining, but accidents still happened. "Morning, Jake. Lisa." Dr. Hayes sat down heavily in the chair across from Jake's desk. "Mrs. Patterson is doing better. Her broken arm is healing well. But I'm worried about the radiation levels in the eastern mining sector." "How bad?" Jake asked. "Not dangerous yet, but we should limit exposure time. Maybe rotate the crews more often." Dr. Hayes rubbed his eyes. He had been the colony's only doctor for 10 years. Patricia Brown helped as much as she could, but she was a nurse, not a doctor. They needed more medical staff. "I'll talk to the mining foreman," Jake said. "Anything else?" "The Johnson baby has a fever. Nothing serious, just normal childhood illness. But I want to keep watching her." Dr. Hayes stood up. "Oh, and Kevin Murphy wants to see you. Something about the security roster." After Dr. Hayes left, Lisa chuckled. "Kevin probably wants more people for his security team again." Jake smiled. Kevin Murphy had been pushing for a larger security force since he arrived 2 years ago. The former Marine sergeant took his job seriously, maybe too seriously. New Haven had never had major crime problems. The biggest incidents were usually fights at Murphy's bar on Friday nights, and even those were rare. The morning passed quietly. Jake reviewed supply requests, approved work schedules, and listened to complaints about housing assignments. Normal colony business. Lisa handled the communications with other human settlements and scheduled meetings with department heads. Around noon, Kevin Murphy arrived at Jake's office. The security chief was a big man with graying hair and scars on his hands from his military service. He always looked like he expected trouble even in peaceful New Haven. "Jake, we need to talk about defenses," Kevin said without sitting down. "Kevin, we've had this conversation before. The Colony Council approved your current security team. We have the orbital platforms and Commander Richardson's ship. What more do you want?" Kevin frowned. "Those platforms are old. The Horizon is a good ship, but it's just one frigate. If someone really wanted to attack us, we couldn't fight them off." "Who would attack us?" Lisa asked. "We're farmers, not soldiers. We don't have anything worth stealing except food, and there are easier ways to get food than attacking a colony." "The Zephyrians have been active in this sector," Kevin said. "Long-range sensors picked up their ships 3 times in the past month." Jake had heard about the Zephyrians. They were a militant alien race that had been expanding their territory for the past decade, but they usually attacked military targets, or rich mining worlds. New Haven was neither. "They're probably just patrols," Jake said. The Zephyrians want valuable resources, not farming colonies. Kevin shook his head. You don't understand how these aliens think. They see any human settlement as a target. We look weak to them. We are weak, Lisa said. That's why we stay out of their way. New Haven is not important enough for them to bother with. Kevin left after arguing for 10 more minutes. Jake understood the man's concerns, but resources were limited. They needed farming equipment more than weapons. The colony had to pay for itself, and food production was their only income. The afternoon brought more routine business. Ben Tucker reported problems with irrigation in Sector 7. Maria Santos needed approval for new greenhouse construction. Carl Davis wanted to upgrade the power grid. Susan Williams requested more spare parts for the atmospheric processors. At dinner time, Jake walked through the colony's main street. Children played in the small park while their parents finished work for the day. The shopping center buzzed with quiet activity. People bought groceries, picked up supplies, and chatted with neighbors. It felt peaceful and normal. Dr. Hayes waved from the medical center where he was treating a worker who had cut his hand. Patricia Brown stood beside him, holding bandages and talking softly to the patient. They made a good team, even if they were overworked. Commander Paul Richardson sat at a table outside Murphy's bar, drinking coffee and reading reports from his ship. The Horizon was old but well-maintained. Richardson had been in space for 30 years and knew his job. His crew of 12 kept the frigate running and provided the colony's only real defense against pirates or raiders. As the evening settled over New Haven, Jake felt satisfied with another quiet day. The colony was growing, slowly but steadily. People were healthy and happy. Crime was almost non-existent. The crops were good, and they had enough supplies for several months. He had no way of knowing that Zephyrian scout ships were watching from the edge of the system, analyzing the colony's defenses and counting the population. The aliens saw exactly what Kevin Murphy had warned about: a wealthy target with minimal protection. The Zephyrians had attacked dozens of colonies across this part of the galaxy. Most surrendered quickly when faced with superior firepower. The few that resisted were destroyed as examples to others. New Haven looked like another easy conquest. War Commander Thexval reviewed the intelligence reports from his flagship. WI. Human colony had decent orbital platforms, but nothing that could stop a real assault. Their single frigate would be destroyed in the first minutes of battle. The ground defenses consisted of a handful of security guards with light weapons. The Zephyrians did not understand humans yet. They saw the peaceful colony and assumed the entire species was weak. This would prove to be their greatest mistake. The attack began at sunrise. Jake Morrison woke to the sound of explosions that shook his house like an earthquake. The windows rattled, and books fell from shelves. Outside, orange flames lit up the purple sky as the orbital defense platforms died one by one. Lisa Carter was running toward the administration building when the second wave of explosions hit. The communication tower collapsed in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. She fell to her knees as debris rained around her, but kept crawling forward. Someone had to coordinate the emergency response. In space above New Haven, Commander Paul Richardson watched his sensors in horror. 12 Zephyrian warships had appeared without warning, their weapons already firing. The alien vessels were twice the size of his frigate and carried enough firepower to level a city. All hands to battle stations. Richardson ordered into his comm system. This is not a drill. We are under attack. The Horizon's crew moved quickly despite their shock. They had trained for this moment but never expected it to happen. The ship's weapons powered up while Richardson tried to send a distress signal to Earth. The Zephyrians were jamming most frequencies, but maybe one message would get through. On the ground, Kevin Murphy grabbed his rifle and ran toward the security station. Alien dropships were landing in the fields outside town, their hulls glowing red from atmospheric entry. Each ship was the size of a building and carried dozens of Zephyrian soldiers. All security personnel report immediately, Murphy shouted into his radio. This is a code red emergency. We are under invasion. The first Zephyrian ground troops emerged from their landing ships like nightmares. They stood 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and reptilian features. Their armor was black metal that seemed to absorb light. Each soldier carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Dr. Hayes was treating a farmer with burns when the hospital shook from nearby explosions. Through the windows, he could see alien aircraft strafing the residential areas. Patricia Brown was helping evacuate patients to the basement when a plasma bolt punched through the wall above her head. "We need to move everyone underground," Dr. Hayes told her. "The basement medical bay is our best option." Ben Tucker and Maria Santos were organizing civilian evacuations when the Zephyrians reached the farming district. The aliens showed no mercy to unarmed colonists. They fired on anyone who moved, including children trying to run to safety. "Get everyone to the caves," Ben shouted to Maria as they herded a group of families toward the old mining tunnels. "The underground shelters can't hold everyone." The Zephyrian soldiers moved through New Haven like a plague. They destroyed everything that might be useful and captured anyone who surrendered. Their weapons turned buildings to ash and left craters in the streets. The smell of burning plastic and metal filled the air. Commander Richardson knew his ship could not win against 12 enemy vessels, but he refused to abandon the colony. The Horizon fired its missiles at the nearest Zephyrian cruiser, scoring hits that barely scratched the alien armor. "Sir, we're taking heavy fire," his weapons officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. "Keep fighting," Richardson ordered. Buy the colonists time to escape. The Zephyrian return fire was devastating. Energy beams punched through the Horizon's shields like they were made of paper. The ship's hull began to crack under the assault, and fires broke out in multiple compartments. Richardson made a decision that would save thousands of lives. Instead of retreating, he aimed his damaged ship at the Zephyrian flagship and pushed the engines to maximum power. "All hands abandon ship," he announced. "This is Captain Richardson. It has been an honor serving with you." The Horizon crashed into the enemy flagship in a ball of nuclear fire. Both ships exploded, creating a brief new sun in the sky above New Haven. The blast gave the colonists precious minutes to reach safety and allowed one emergency message pod to escape the system jamming. On the ground, Kevin Murphy's security team fought desperately against overwhelming odds. They had hunting rifles and pistols against alien plasma weapons and powered armor. Murphy watched his people die one by one, but they never stopped fighting. Jake Morrison had reached the emergency command center when a Zephyrian squad broke down the door. The aliens pointed their weapons at him while their leader, a massive creature with scarred armor, studied the human administrator. "You will surrender this colony," the alien said in broken English. "Resistance is futile." "Go to hell," Jake replied. The Zephyrian leader struck Jake across the face with a clawed hand, sending him to the floor. Blood ran from 3 deep cuts on his cheek, but he glared up at his captor without fear. Lisa Carter had managed to reach the backup communication system in time. Her fingers flew over the controls as explosions shook the building around her. The message was simple but urgent. New Haven under attack by Zephyrian Empire. Requesting immediate assistance. Casualties heavy. She pressed the send button just as alien soldiers burst into the room. Lisa smiled as the transmission indicator showed green. Earth would know what happened here. The battle for New Haven lasted 6 hours. When it ended, half the colony lay in ruins. 30,000 colonists had been captured and loaded onto Zephyrian transport ships. The aliens planned to sell them as slaves in distant markets where humans were exotic curiosities. 20,000 colonists escaped to the caves and abandoned mining complexes. They took whatever supplies they could carry and prepared for a long struggle. Among the survivors were Ben Tucker, Maria Santos, Dr. Hayes, Patricia Brown, and Lisa Carter. Kevin Murphy had died fighting in the town square, taking 12 Zephyrians with him. The aliens established control over the ruins of New Haven and began stripping anything valuable. They set up a base in the former administration building and started hunting for the survivors hiding in the wilderness. War Commander Thexval walked through the conquered colony with satisfaction. Another primitive species had learned the price of weakness. The humans had fought harder than expected, but the result was never in doubt. His forces had captured thousands of slaves and secured another world for the Zephyrian Empire. The war commander did not know that Lisa Carter's message had reached Earth. He had no idea that humanity possessed a communications network spanning dozens of star systems. Most importantly, he did not understand that attacking human civilians, especially children, would trigger a response unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the hidden caves beneath New Haven, the survivors tended their wounds and planned their resistance. They had lost their homes and many friends, but they were still alive. They would make the aliens pay for every day of occupation. Dr. Hayes worked by flashlight to treat the injured, while Patricia Brown organized the medical supplies they had salvaged. Ben Tucker and Maria Santos counted food and water, calculating how long they could survive underground. Lisa Carter sat alone with a portable radio, trying to contact other human colonies. Static filled most frequencies, but sometimes she heard voices speaking English. Other settlements were still free. Earth still existed. Humanity would not abandon New Haven. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The Zephyrians thought they had won an easy victory against a weak species. They were about to learn the difference between humans at peace and humans at war. The message from New Haven reached Earth 3 days after the attack. Admiral Robert Kane was eating breakfast in his quarters when the emergency alert sounded throughout the naval headquarters. He had commanded ships for 25 years and fought in 3 major conflicts, but he had never heard the alarm that meant human civilians were under alien attack. President Helen Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Earth Assembly within hours. The Great Hall filled with representatives from every human colony, corporation, and military branch. The images from Lisa Carter's transmission played on screens around the room, showing burning buildings and captured children being loaded onto alien ships. The silence was complete when the recording ended. Then President Martinez stood at the podium, her face harder than anyone had ever seen it. For the first time in human history, an alien species has attacked our civilians. They have killed our people and enslaved our children. Today we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens our families. The response was immediate. Every human world pledged ships, supplies, and soldiers to the war effort. Companies that had competed for decades worked together to build weapons and equipment. Even the criminal organizations offered to help, putting aside old grudges to face a common enemy. Admiral Kane found himself in command of the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. 200 ships from across human space converged on the Sol system. The new flagship UES Retribution was joined by heavy cruisers, destroyers, assault carriers, and support vessels. It was more firepower than any human had ever controlled. General Patricia Stone arrived from Mars with detailed plans for ground operations. She had studied every available piece of information about Zephyrian tactics and technology. Her team included specialists in alien biology, weapons experts, and combat engineers who would design equipment specifically for fighting reptilian soldiers. Meanwhile, on Kepler 442c, the survivors of New Haven fought their own war against the occupying forces. Lisa Carter had become the unofficial leader of the resistance, coordinating between different groups hiding in caves and abandoned facilities scattered across the planet. Ben Tucker led raids against Zephyrian supply convoys, using his knowledge of the farming equipment to build improvised weapons. The aliens had powerful armor, but a modified harvester could still crush them if they were caught by surprise. Maria Santos organized the civilian refugees, making sure everyone had food and shelter in the underground hideouts. Dr. Hayes had established a field hospital in an old mining complex. He treated wounded resistance fighters and refugees, while Patricia Brown helped deliver 3 babies who had been born since the attack. Life continued even in the darkest circumstances. The most surprising development was the arrival of Zephyrian deserters. A small group of alien soldiers had grown disgusted with their army's brutality and sought help from the human resistance. Dr. Hayes treated their injuries while Lisa Carter questioned them about enemy plans and weaknesses. "Your people fight differently than others we have conquered," one deserter told Lisa through a translation device. "Most species surrender when they see our power. Humans become more dangerous when cornered." The information from the deserters proved valuable. The Resistance learned about Zephyrian communication frequencies, patrol schedules, and supply routes. They discovered that the aliens were having trouble with the planet's atmosphere, which was slightly toxic to their species over long periods. Back on Earth, Admiral Kane studied intelligence reports about the Zephyrian Empire. The aliens controlled 43 star systems and had conquered 16 different species over the past century. They were experienced conquerors who relied on overwhelming force and terror tactics to break enemy resistance quickly. They expect us to surrender after they demonstrate their power, Kane explained to his staff officers. When species don't give up immediately, the Zephyrians escalate to total destruction. They have never faced an enemy that gets stronger under pressure. Commander Daniel White, the fleet intelligence officer, had spent weeks analyzing captured Zephyrian technology and communications. His team had broken several alien codes and identified key weaknesses in their military structure. Their command system is very centralized, White reported. Each fleet answers directly to war commanders who make all important decisions. If we can disrupt their leadership, their forces will become confused and ineffective. The human fleet spent 2 months preparing for the counterattack. New weapons were tested and installed. Soldiers trained in simulated Zephyrian environments. Pilots learned to fight against alien ship designs they had never encountered before. Most importantly, the fleet developed tactics that took advantage of human adaptability. Unlike the Zephyrians, who relied on standard battle formations, human forces could change their approach based on battlefield conditions. Each ship captain had authority to make decisions without waiting for orders from headquarters. News of the preparation spread throughout human space. Every colony followed the reports eagerly, knowing that the response to New Haven would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. Children too young to understand war drew pictures of Earth's ships defeating the aliens. Adults who had never considered military service volunteered for combat duty. Other alien species watched the human mobilization with growing concern. The Zephyrian Empire had seemed unstoppable for decades, but humanity was responding with a speed and determination that surprised galactic observers. Some species began quietly moving their forces away from the borders of human space. On New Haven, the Resistance received word that Earth's fleet was coming. The news spread quickly through the underground network, giving hope to people who had lived in darkness for months. Lisa Carter organized preparations for the liberation, while Ben Tucker and his fighters planned to support the attack from the ground. Dr. Hayes continued treating the sick and wounded, but now he also prepared for the casualties that would come when the fighting resumed. Patricia Brown helped him set up additional medical stations in caves across the planet. They would be ready to help both humans and any aliens who surrendered. The Zephyrians in the New Haven system detected the approaching human fleet when it was still 2 days away. War Commander Thexval had never faced such a large enemy force. His original 12 ships had been reinforced to 24 vessels, but the humans were bringing 10 times that number. For the first time since the attack, Thexval felt uncertainty. His species had always won through superior firepower, but the humans seemed to have matched their technology while bringing more ships. The war commander sent urgent requests for reinforcements to the Zephyrian High Command. The response from his superiors was not encouraging. Other human fleets were attacking Zephyrian positions across 3 different sectors. The Empire was fighting on multiple fronts for the first time in its history. No additional ships could be spared for the defense of one captured colony. Admiral Kane's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, exactly 73 days after the attack on New Haven. The human ships spread into combat formation, while their sensors analyzed the Zephyrian defenses. The aliens had fortified the planet's orbit and positioned their ships to protect the most valuable installations. Kane opened a communication channel to the enemy fleet. His message was broadcast in both English and Zephyrian languages. This is Admiral Robert Kane of the United Earth Navy. You have attacked human civilians and enslaved our people. Surrender immediately and release all prisoners, or we will take them back by force. War Commander Thexval's reply came quickly. Humans are weak. You will join your colonists in slavery or die trying to save them. Admiral Kane smiled grimly as he closed the channel. The Zephyrians still did not understand what they had awakened. They were about to learn that attacking human children was the worst mistake any species could make. The battle for New Haven began with surgical precision. Admiral Kane's fleet moved like a perfectly coordinated machine. Instead of charging straight at the Zephyrian ships, the human vessels split into multiple groups that attacked from different angles. Each squadron had specific targets and clear objectives. Captain Tony Rodriguez led the first assault with his carrier group. His ships launched hundreds of fighter craft that swarmed around the alien vessels like angry insects. The Zephyrian gunners could not target all the small, fast-moving ships at once. War Commander Thexval watched his sensors in growing alarm as human fighters destroyed his orbital weapons platforms one by one. The aliens had superior firepower, but the humans were using tactics he had never encountered. Every time his ships turned to face one threat, another group attacked from a different direction. "Focus fire on their flagship," Thexval ordered his fleet. "Destroy their command ship and they will scatter." The Zephyrian vessels concentrated their weapons on the UES Retribution, sending massive energy beams toward Admiral Kane's command center. But the human flagship was not where it appeared to be. Advanced holographic projectors made it seem like the ship was in one location while it actually fought from somewhere else entirely. The real Retribution struck the Zephyrian flagship from behind while the aliens were firing at an illusion. Admiral Kane's weapons tore through the enemy ship's armor and destroyed its main engines. The alien command vessel began spinning helplessly through space. General Stone's ground assault began while the space battle continued above. Her transport ships broke through the orbital defenses and landed in 3 different locations around New Haven. Each landing force had a specific mission designed to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing damage to the occupying forces. Lieutenant Colonel Michelle Brown led combat engineers who moved ahead of the main assault troops. Her teams disabled Zephyrian defensive systems using techniques developed specifically for fighting alien technology. The humans had learned from months of studying enemy equipment and tactics. The Zephyrians on the ground found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had fought before. Human soldiers coordinated their attacks with precision timing, supporting each other in ways that maximized their effectiveness. Every squad knew exactly what the others were doing. Captain Rodriguez's special forces landed near the slave camps, where 30,000 colonists were being held. His soldiers moved through the Zephyrian guards like ghosts, using silenced weapons and non-lethal tactics that left enemies unconscious rather than dead. "Remember, we're here to save lives, not take them," Rodriguez told his team. "Every alien we don't kill is one less enemy shooting at our people." The rescued colonists included children who had been separated from their parents for months. Many were sick from poor treatment and inadequate food. The Special Forces medics worked quickly to stabilize the worst cases while preparing everyone for evacuation. Lisa Carter emerged from the underground hideouts when she heard human ships landing. Her resistance fighters had been preparing for this moment, marking enemy positions and identifying safe routes for the rescue operations. The months of guerrilla warfare had given them detailed knowledge of every Zephyrian installation. Ben Tucker led his raiders in coordinated strikes against alien supply depots. The improvised weapons his team had built from farming equipment proved devastatingly effective against surprised Zephyrian soldiers. A modified combine harvester crushed an entire enemy squad before they could react. Dr. Hayes and Patricia Brown worked frantically to treat casualties from both sides of the battle. Their field hospital became a symbol of human values, providing medical care to wounded Zephyrians who had surrendered. The aliens seemed shocked that their enemies would help them after everything that had happened. The space battle reached its climax when 3 Zephyrian cruisers tried to escape the system. Admiral Kane's pursuit squadrons intercepted them before they could reach hyperspace. The alien ship surrendered rather than face destruction, their crews finally understanding that they could not win against human determination. War Commander Thexval found himself trapped on his disabled flagship as human boarding parties cut through the hull. His elite guards fought desperately in the ship's corridors, but they were overwhelmed by soldiers who seemed to know exactly where to attack. Admiral Kane himself led the final assault on the Zephyrian command center. The war commander stood, alone among the bodies of his officers, his weapon pointed at the approaching humans. His reptilian features showed emotions that translated easily across species: fear, anger, and disbelief. "This is impossible," Thexval hissed in broken English. "We are the superior race. You cannot defeat the Zephyrian Empire." "We just did," Kane replied calmly. "Your people made one crucial mistake. You attacked our children." The ground battle ended with Zephyrian forces surrendering across the planet. General Stone's troops had liberated New Haven with minimal damage to the colony's infrastructure. The precision of the human assault left most buildings intact while eliminating the occupying forces. Jake Morrison was found in a prison camp, beaten but alive. He wept when he saw human soldiers cutting through the fence around his compound. Hundreds of other colonists shared his tears of relief and joy as they realized their nightmare was finally over. The liberation of New Haven took 18 hours from start to finish. Human casualties were remarkably light considering the scope of the operation. The aliens had lost most of their fleet and ground forces, with survivors held as prisoners of war pending formal surrender negotiations. But Admiral Kane knew the battle was far from over. Intelligence reports showed that other human fleets were attacking Zephyrian positions throughout the galaxy. What had started as revenge for one colony was becoming a war that would reshape the balance of galactic power. Commander White intercepted communications between surviving Zephyrian commanders. The aliens were retreating from multiple systems, abandoning conquered worlds as human forces advanced. Species that had been enslaved for decades were declaring independence as their oppressors fled. "Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from Zephyrian governors in 6 different star systems," White reported to Admiral Kane. "They want to negotiate terms before our other fleets arrive." Kane studied the tactical displays showing human forces advancing across a front that spanned dozens of light years. The response to the New Haven attack had grown into something much larger than anyone had planned. Humanity was not just rescuing one colony anymore. They were liberating an entire region of the galaxy. On the surface of Kepler 442c, the colonists began returning to their homes. Many buildings needed repair, and some areas were too damaged to salvage, but New Haven would survive. The community that had been torn apart by alien invasion was coming back together. Dr. Hayes established a new medical center that would serve not just the human colonists, but also refugees from other species who had escaped Zephyrian slavery. Patricia Brown organized volunteer nurses from among the rescued prisoners, creating a healthcare system that reflected humanity's commitment to helping others. Lisa Carter stood in the ruins of the old administration building, watching construction. Crews cleared debris from what would become a memorial to those who died in the attack. The colony would rebuild, but it would never forget the price of freedom or the courage of those who fought to preserve it. The galaxy was learning that attacking humans had consequences far beyond what anyone had imagined. The species that other races had dismissed as insignificant farmers and traders were revealing themselves to be something much more dangerous. Protectors who would cross any distance and pay any price to defend their own. 6 months after the attack on New Haven, the Zephyrian Empire no longer existed. The war crimes trial of War Commander Thexval was broadcast across the galaxy. Judge William Parker presided over the proceedings in a courtroom built on the ruins of the old New Haven administration building. Representatives from dozens of species watched as the alien commander faced justice for his actions. Thexval sat in chains, his gray skin pale with fear. The proud warrior who had once commanded fleets now trembled as human prosecutors presented evidence of his crimes. Videos showed Zephyrian soldiers shooting unarmed colonists and loading children onto slave ships. The galaxy watched in silence as the full scope of the atrocities was revealed. "The defendant stands accused of crimes against sentient beings," Judge Parker announced. "The evidence shows deliberate targeting of civilians, enslavement of captured populations, and destruction of non-military targets. How do you plead?" Thexval's translator device crackled as he spoke. "I followed the orders of my superiors. This is how war has always been conducted." "Not anymore," Parker replied firmly. "The galaxy has new standards now." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Survivors testified about the horrors they had endured. Lisa Carter described watching her friends die in the initial bombardment. Dr. Hayes, spoke about treating children who had been beaten by their captors. Jake Morrison, still scarred from his interrogation, told the court about the systematic destruction of his peaceful colony. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Thex Val was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment on a prison colony established for war criminals. His final words before being led away were a warning that other species would come to conquer humanity. "You have made enemies throughout the galaxy," he said. "Others will finish what we started." Judge Parker's response became famous across human space. "Let them try. They will learn the same lesson you did." The transformation of New Haven symbolized humanity's new role in the galaxy. Governor Jake Morrison presided over the rebuilt colony, which now hosted a major military base commanded by General Kevin Murphy Jr., the son of the security chief who had died defending the original settlement. The new base was not just a defensive installation. It served as headquarters for the Human Liberation Fleet, which continued operations to free enslaved populations throughout the former Zephyrian territories. Admiral Kane coordinated rescue missions that had saved millions of beings from slavery and oppression. Dr. Hayes had established the New Haven Medical Institute, a facility that provided advanced healthcare to species across the sector. His research into alien physiology had led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. The Institute's mobile medical units traveled to refugee camps and disaster zones, carrying human medical knowledge to those who needed it most. The doctors' work with former Zephyrian prisoners had been particularly successful. Many of the alien deserters who had helped the resistance were now productive members of galactic society. They served as translators, advisors, and living proof that redemption was possible, even after participating in atrocities. The political changes were equally dramatic. Ambassador Laura Anderson represented humanity in the Galactic Council, where human voices now carried significant weight. The species that had once ignored or dismissed human civilization now sought Earth's protection and alliance. The council chambers on the neutral world of Centaurus Prime buzzed with activity as representatives from hundreds of species gathered for the quarterly assembly. The human delegation occupied seats that had been reserved for more advanced civilizations just months earlier. "The chair recognizes the human representative," announced the council president, a dignified being from the ancient Alterian race. Laura Anderson stood and addressed the assembly with confidence that would have been impossible before the New Haven crisis. "The human government proposes the establishment of a galactic protection service to prevent future atrocities against civilian populations. We offer to contribute ships, personnel, and resources to this effort." The response was immediate and positive. Species after species rose to support the proposal. The liberation of the Zephyrian territories had shown what was possible when civilized races worked together against oppression. Not everyone was pleased with humanity's new prominence. The Korthak Confederacy, a militaristic alliance that had profited from the slave trade, viewed human expansion with suspicion. Their representative spoke with barely concealed hostility. "The humans have upset the natural order of the galaxy," the Korthak delegate hissed. "They interfere with the ancient rites of conquest." Admiral Kane, attending as a military advisor, responded with calm authority. "The right to enslave others is not ancient or natural. It is simply wrong. Any species that threatens civilian populations will face the consequences." The Korthak delegate sat down without another word. The message was clear. The galaxy had new rules, and humanity was prepared to enforce them. The economic changes were equally significant. Human merchants and traders now operated throughout the galaxy, protected by the reputation their military had earned. The agricultural techniques developed on New Haven were being shared with worlds that had struggled with food production for centuries. Ben Tucker had become an agricultural advisor to the Galactic Council, teaching sustainable farming methods to species that had never considered such approaches. His work helped feed millions of beings on worlds that had been damaged by war or natural disasters. Maria Santos managed refugee resettlement programs that found new homes for populations displaced by conflicts. Her experience organizing these New Haven resistance had taught her how to coordinate complex operations under difficult circumstances. The memorial to those who died in the original attack stood in the center of New Haven's rebuilt town square. The names of Kevin Murphy and the other defenders were carved in stone beneath a simple inscription. They gave their lives so others could live free. Children played in the park surrounding the memorial, their laughter a reminder that life had returned to normal in many ways. But the defensive installations visible on the horizon showed that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. The galaxy had learned that humans were not the weak, primitive species they had appeared to be. The peaceful farmers of New Haven had been transformed into protectors who could project power across vast distances. The species that had once been dismissed as insignificant now commanded respect from the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Ambassador Anderson's final speech to the Galactic Council summarized the transformation perfectly. 6 months ago, the HFY Zephyrians attacked New Haven because they thought we were weak. They discovered that humans are strongest when we fight to protect others. We did not seek to become a galactic power, but we will not abandon that responsibility now that it has been thrust upon us. The applause that followed was thunderous. Representatives from species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule stood and cheered. The human delegation had earned their place through sacrifice and determination, not conquest or intimidation. As the assembly ended, delegates from across the galaxy approached the human representatives with requests for assistance, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The species that had once ignored humanity now competed for Earth's attention and support. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of the space station where the council met, watching ships from dozens of civilizations come and go. Human vessels moved among them as equals, their crews no longer seen as primitive colonists, but as guardians of galactic peace. The attack on New Haven had been intended to demonstrate Zephyrian power and human weakness. Instead, it had revealed the greatest truth about humanity. They were a species that became more dangerous when their children were threatened. The galaxy would never make that mistake again.